It's what, 7:22? Yeah, I know. This is a rule.
Transmission lines. Who rights away?
Oh yeah.
Off record. Off record.
Yeah, did you watch the SEC?
I've been working.
Good evening. I welcome everybody to tonight's New Kent County Planning Commission meeting for December 16th, 2024. If you would, please rise as you're able and face the flag for a moment of silence and the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Please have a seat. Could we commence with a roll call, please?
Ms. Rose,
Here.
Ms. Townsend,
Here.
Ms. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Here.
Reverend Hathaway,
Here.
Ms. Thomas, Mr. La Rochelle,
Here.
Dr. Schmidt,
Here.
Mr. Davis,
Here.
Mr. Moyer,
Here.
Mr. Bennett.
Here. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for November 18th. Are there any corrections, deletions, erasures, or more information that's needed for those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no corrections that need to be made, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Any discussion? If not, Motions to approve. Roll call, please.
Ms. Rose,
Aye.
Ms. Townsend,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson, Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Reverend Hathaway,
Aye.
Mr. La Rochelle,
Aye.
Dr. Schmidt,
Abstain.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Moyer,
Aye.
Mr. Bennett.
Aye. Minutes have been approved. Next item on our agenda for tonight is citizen comment period. And if somebody would check the foyer to see if anybody invisibly signed up. I'm sure they haven't. Being none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is presentations. And I think Mr. Hathaway has one for us tonight.
This evening, I am here to present a draft of the FY26 Capital Improvements Program. No action is required for tonight or being requested. We have some time. If there are no questions upon your review, we'll plan to schedule a public hearing at our January meeting. And if we need more time, we can push to February as well. So definitely want to make sure everyone's comfortable with this document before we move to public hearing and action. So I'm going to start with the why. The why is Code of Virginia 15.2-2239. Authorizes a local planning commission to prepare and submit annually a capital improvements program to the governing body or official in charge of the budget preparation. A local planning commission may, at the direction of the governing body, prepare and revise annually a capital improvement program. Our governing body has requested, in hopes that we'll receive more public input on our capital improvement program. We've requested that this be reviewed by the Planning Commission and a recommendation be forwarded to the board. Want to look at the money before we get into the projects of where we stand financially. The first column is a table of available capital funds for next fiscal year. Our capital fund balance is $7.5 million. We have $413,000 in proffers and unobligated Colonial Downs funds totaling $11.8 million for a total of available capital funds of $19,717,351.48. The plan that I'm going to present to you this afternoon actually totals $23,074,383. And I'll show you how we'll get to that fact, even though it's above the capital fund balance. Actually, from our capital fund balance, we're only using a little over $14 million of capital funds, which leaves a balance of $5 million after this proposed plan, if it's adopted, moves forward. We have $2.9 million in federal and state funds. Some of those are formula-based funding. Some of those are grants that we anticipate receiving next fiscal year. We also have $5.3 million in Central Virginia Transportation Authority funding. That's a whole nother pot of fund that we receive from special taxes we're authorized by the state to collect. And then we have $683,000 of a special pot of Colonial Downs funding that's been set aside for economic development incentives. That's how we get to the 23 million. I wish it was 23,000. $23,074,383. That leaves remaining available capital funds of $5,652,835.48. And on top of that, you'll see in my project recommendations, there's another $2 million set aside for future capital projects that's unobligated. So really the total is $7.6 million. But also on top of that, we have another $1 million reserve, capital reserve. So really there's $8 million, over $8 million of unobligated available cash. Just going through the projects, and I'll run through those briefly. Please stop me if you have any questions. Before I go through the projects, though, a little bit about the document that you have in front of you. You have everything, everything that I've had access to and have reviewed. We've tried to put all of that in a folder and give that information to you, so you're looking at the same thing that I am when I'm reviewing projects. The first section of the notebook or pack that you've been given is a list of the projects, but behind that is the actual individual requests that I've received from county departments with all the background information on those projects that have been considered for funding. Going through this, I'm just going to focus tonight on projects that I'm recommending for funding. There's a lot of requests that I've received, and unfortunately, I did not feel that it was necessary to move forward with all those requests. So I'll only go through the requests that I am recommending for funding. And first is starting off with our airport. I am recommending $1.2 million in funding for the construction of a new hangar that will house about 18 new aircrafts at our airport. The construction cost of that is $1.2 million. We do anticipate just about 50% of that funding coming from the state, the Virginia Department of Aviation. So our obligation will be $689,000 for that project. I can tell you we have a very long waiting list right now of aircraft owners that want to house their aircraft. And what we find is our rents are cheaper than the rest of the region. And people like flying in this airspace opposed to the Richmond airspace because it's a lot busier in the Richmond airspace. So you have less congestion here, cheaper hangar space, which all leads to a waiting list. And next project is, I'm sorry, I skipped one, site prep for the construction of the hangars. We've estimated that to be $800,000. A good portion of that will be funded by the FAA and Virginia Department of Aviation, and our obligation will be $160,000. Next project, demolition of the old terminal building, which is the original terminal building on the airport. $25,000 is the cost for that. And normally I would give my general services department some tractors and equipment and tell them to have fun. But the problem is there are portions of this hangar, of the terminal building, that we want to save. There are some hangars attached to the original terminal building, and the hangars are in good shape. So we have to be careful of how we demolish that so that we don't destroy the hangars. So we're going to hire some professionals to tear down the terminal building. And that concludes the airport projects that I am recommending for approval. Moving to administration, you will see The $2 million that I've talked about, that I'm recommending that we set aside for future capital projects. I've learned throughout the year something comes up that wasn't planned or budgeted, and it just makes it easier if we have a set aside in our budget so that we can move quickly if the need be. And this $2 million also is coming from Colonial Downs revenues that we have received and that we're receiving in this fiscal year. And if I could pause just a little bit, talking about Colonial Downs, because I know the question is, well, what if the state cuts off our revenues during this session of the Assembly? This current budget, the FY26 budget that we're planning for next fiscal year, is based off of Colonial Downs revenues that we're collecting in FY25. So therefore, if we are cut with our Colonial Downs funding, there'll be very limited impacts on future projects because those projects are funded with the revenues collected in the previous year. Also, with Colonial Downs revenue, we are using almost all of it in capital projects, one-time expenditures, and not operational. This current fiscal year, we use about $1.4 million to adjust some of the salaries and hire additional firefighters and adjust some of the salaries in our sheriff's department. But it's only $1.4 million, and I don't anticipate us needing that revenue going forward in the next fiscal year. So if they do cut the money from us, it will definitely hurt with future capital projects because there are some big capital needs, but we're not going to be in a position where we have to lay off or cut any of our operational expenditures.
Mr. Hathaway, I have a
Yes.
quick question for you on that note. Is the county doing anything in sort of lobbying as we work towards the General Assembly session? Can we give note on that in this meeting as we move forward? Because there's some bigger counties that are going to push at us because they're going to have some bigger facilities than we are that are going to try to receive some of that Colonial Downs money. And I know that we need to fight for that. And I just would like to hear a little bit of a statement on that.
Yeah, sure. Yes, most definitely. We have hired a lobbyist group, one of the best in the state of Virginia. There are conversations that are going on and that have been going on from the governor's office on down. So there are a lot of things in the work. And I've gotten some comments, too, after Sunday's news article that felt that I wasn't aggressive enough in fighting for our money at Colonial Downs. Well, we've taken the position, number one, fighting against the General Assembly is not a fight that we're going to win.
Agreed.
And we've taken the position that publicly we're going to continue to push for this to be a process in which we'll have input and it'll be a collaboration so that the funding may change. Most likely, the funding formula will change, but we want to be a part of that discussions, and so far we have been.
Will we, because the General Assembly typically adjourns in February, will we see that come July 1? Is that the thought? Because that's typically what happens when General Assembly chooses things. We're going to see a change in July 1 because then we won't see a full fiscal year of revenue from Colonial Downs funds. We know it's going to change. We know we're not going to see the same amount.
I think the thought is, and we don't know what legislation is going to be introduced. I know Senator Bagby is working on a bill as well as Delegate Torian. And it seems like they're working together. So there'll probably be a very similar bill, budget bill in the House and Senate that's introduced. I don't believe, though, what's adopted, if anything is adopted in this upcoming General Assembly, will take effect next fiscal year. I think they're going to give us at least a year of grace. But I can tell you there is a push from some others higher up to wait on action. The governor has mentioned that he'd like to see a gaming commission So there is a push that we should wait until the Gaming Commission is formed and then let that Gaming Commission develop a formula for the distribution of funding. So we will see.
Good to know.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Hathaway, is New Kent County alone in this drive to maintain?
We are. We're the only one that really benefits from the current legislation. And, I mean, I understand the argument that the other localities are making. And that is the reason when this was set up that we made the decision to only spend this money on capital funding, one-time expenditure. We kind of anticipated that this day would be here at some point. But yes, and what it is for those that aren't aware, New Kent gets 0.5% of all the gaming revenue at the Rosies in New Kent County. New Kent also gets 0.5% of all the gaming revenue in the Rosies and other localities as well. Those localities that have Rosies, they also get 0.5%. So take Richmond, take Hampton, whatever they make in revenues from their facilities, we make the exact same thing from their facilities. And they're saying that it's not fair. They should keep that revenue in their locality. Our argument, one of our arguments, and there are several arguments, is that we are the host community. The historic horse racing machines are tied to live days of racing. There's one machine that's permitted, there's 100 machines that are permitted for every 1 day of live horse racing in New Kent at Colonial Downs. And to support live horse racing, that takes resources from the locality to support that. Therefore, we should receive some funding, some revenue from other localities as well.
Mr. Hathaway, the one thing I don't think we talk about enough is what the state's tax number is from Rosie's. Is somewhere around 10 cents versus, or even higher?
No, well, 10 cents, yes. I
Okay.
believe it's in excess of 20 million. But
Okay, but my comment on that is that there are 6 jurisdictions that are like us that are getting, but there's 63 other counties that are getting monies because we have a racetrack from that. So that is, and if you start stripping that away, you know, that becomes a major factor for those other counties too. So, you know, because also there's sales tax, meals tax that's also involved in that we don't directly get completely, that the state gets. You know, so they should be, that gives us, you know, like 50 delegates that should be somewhat on our side, you know, but not necessarily.
One other question, Mr. Hathaway. The best of all scenarios would be nothing changes. Then there's a compromise scenario. There's a give and take. What if doomsday comes? We lose that funding. If we have an alternative plan, or looking at alternatives for funding when that money is not available?
Well, we wouldn't lose all of it. You know, we would definitely keep what's generated in New Kent County, which is about a little over 3 million, and that number has grown. But we're currently making, well, just last year we were at about 12.8 million in revenue. So we would go 12.8 to about $3.5 million. So that is a big hit. Now, how that would impact us? It would impact us on some future capital projects that has not been approved yet, but that we are working on planning for right now. We would have to think differently of how we fund those projects. Projects you won't see for FY26 projects, because remember, this is all being funded from revenues we're collecting this year. But there's some projects that are out there. I mean, the schools has expressed interest in the new elementary school. The judge has expressed interest in the new courthouse. We need new administration space here. And definitely we would like to renovate the historic school and make that a community center. So there are some projects out there that we would have to think differently on how we fund.
Thank you.
Central Virginia Transportation Authority. They're capital projects, but they don't touch our capital fund balance. This money is generated from gas tax and the sales tax that comes back to the county. Those projects include $10 million for Exit 211 improvements. Definitely Buc-ee's is driving that need for improvement. We're still working on that $10 million number. We hope that comes down. We've applied for several grants that we think we're going to be successful on, so hopefully the cost will not be that full $10 million. And there's also Route 249 and Dispatch Road Roundabout project. I think we all know the difficulty of making left turns from Dispatch on to New Kent Highway, especially on peak traffic times. And VDOT has approved, actually, a roundabout. Now, they've approved it, but they said that we have to figure out how to fund it. So we are definitely capable of doing that, and we are proposing to set aside $3.5 million of funds in next fiscal year for that project. Economic development. These are primarily economic development incentive grants that have already been approved. And that's coming from another special set aside of Colonial Downs funding to fund that. Next year, we anticipate that we will spend $478,000 on the AutoZone project, $155,000 on the Buc-ee's project, and $50,000 on the CarMax project. Now, and I've seen some flack on Facebook about our economic development incentive grants. But the thing is, this small investment of roughly a little over $6 million will bring in over $30 million to New Kent County. And in this day and time, if you're not offering incentives, that is an expectation of these larger businesses because they're being pulled and attracted by a lot of different localities all across the country. But whenever we offer an incentive, we always make sure that it makes financial sense to New Kent County and that we're not losing money on this deal. And that is definitely not the case here. New Kent County has a small business economic incentive grant. Also, we're proposing $50,000 to go towards that program. With this program, if you are a startup business or an existing business looking to expand, if you have an investment over $100,000, you qualify for economic development incentives from our Economic Development Authority. Fire and rescue. I am proposing $410,000 for the replacement of one ambulance. Yes, one ambulance, $410,000. It's a lot of money, and it's going up every year. But that is the cost to fully equip an ambulance. And we're on a rotation schedule. If you look at these out years, we pretty much have one ambulance per year being replaced.
Yeah, Mr. Hathaway?
Yes.
Of course, I'm going to ask the fire questions.
All right.
So I don't see any engines programmed. So I guess just the timing of that, the talking about rotation is just not
They're
within the next
on
5
a
years.
timing, and of course, they don't get as many miles as our ambulances. But we did purchase, I believe we purchased one last fiscal year, and we're purchasing one this fiscal year. So we're good on the engines for a while. Yeah.
And they're running around $1 million now too, right?
Yes.
About $1 million, I think, for engines, 1.1, 1.2 now.
Yes. Well, yes, for an engine. But some of those ladder trucks are.
You're looking at almost 2.
Yes.
Mr. Hathaway, a question going back to the economic incentives.
Yes.
A minute ago, you said that the incentives will bring in, and I want to make sure I understand, you said $30 million. Is that in revenue to the county or investment in the county?
In revenue to the county, in tax revenue to the county. For every business that comes, we do a pro forma and we project the tax revenue that we're going to collect over the period of the incentive grant. Now, that $30 million isn't all in 1 year. Bucky's incentive is a 10-year incentive program. Also, AutoZone is a 10-year too. So over the stretch of that, that's how that $30 million is calculated. But that is purely tax revenue to the county. Next, for fire and rescue, I've recommended funding for EMS equipment of $144,000. This equipment, I don't recall the name of the piece of equipment, but it does compressions. You can put someone on a board, basically, and instead of performing the CPR, this equipment does the compressions automatically. I'm sure Mr. Davis knows what I'm talking about, but we have this in most of our ambulances now, and our goal is to equip all of our ambulances with this equipment. Next item. Is $26,141 for fire station access control. We've been doing this on a piecemeal basis. We're trying to get all of our fire stations on the same security system and same access control system. And we have one more station to do that. To actually, that's Station 6, the new station that's under construction this year. All of our stations will be on the same access system. Next project is fire station number 2, $5.1 million is proposed for the construction of a new fire station to replace fire station number 2, which is our Quinton fire station. We're currently in negotiations with about 3 property owners for the location of this site, which is nearby the existing fire station, number 2.
So would the acquisition come out of that number, or is it a separate?
Well, I anticipate that the acquisition will come out of this current fiscal year funds, as opposed to this 5.1 is all construction.
Okay.
And we have $484,000 for support fire EMS apparatus. I'm sorry, $150,000. And I believe that is to replace 2 battalion chief vehicles. And when we replace a vehicle, that also includes all the radio equipment and supplies that we upfit on all of our vehicles. Moving to general services. Excuse me. All right. The first project is access control for our Parks and Rec building. We're trying to get that on an automated access control system. So when we lease our gymnasium out to community groups, which we do all the time, we won't have to have someone come in the evening to open the doors. We can program the doors to open and close, just like we have on this building and most of our buildings in the county. Next one is an HVAC system replacement for 5 public safety communications equipment shelters. We have 5 radio towers in the county. That's how we operate our emergency 911 system. And we're proposing to replace the HVAC systems in those shelters, which is extremely important because there's a lot of computer equipment in those shelters. They get very hot. And if they get too hot, you can damage the equipment in there. So. We keep a general maintenance line item in our capital fund of $30,000, and this is just for county facility rehab projects, and it's just regular maintenance. The next project is $85,000 for repair to the courthouse building next door, and then $50,000 is for a roof repair to fire station number 1. And then for fire station number 1, 2, we also have the replacement of an HVAC system. Fire station number 1, there's a replacement of HVAC system proposed for $80,000. Moving to the next line is information technology, $260,000 for server improvements, and it's just replacement of our existing servers. We can get a warranty for most of our computer equipment up to 5 years, and after that it just becomes unsupported by the manufacturers, so it's important for us to replace them. So there are a number of servers that we're proposing to replace, totaling $260,000. Surveillance system, backup solution. This is actually more servers, and the reason it's different, this is an online, a cloud solution as opposed to a physical server, and that's $200,000. And then we're going to migrate, actually Microsoft is forcing us to migrate to Microsoft 365. I don't know if anybody has tried to buy or go to a store and just buy Microsoft Word. You can't do it. They make you buy the whole suite, the 365 suite, and they're making us do that too because we're just having a tough time getting the individual software. That cost is $185 for the license. Parks and Recreation have a number of projects there. First project is park development for Quinton Park. In this current fiscal year, we set aside money for a splash pad. Now that we've actually have a design for the splash pad, we feel that we need about $16,500 more so we can move forward with that project. A similar situation for Pine Fork Park, and the splash pad is proposed for Quinton Park. Similar situation for Pine Fork Park and the construction of basketball courts. We have an estimate in now for the construction of basketball courts, and we're $61,625 short. How did we come up with the splash pad and basketball court? Every year we do surveys. Our Parks and Rec department surveys the communities, and these were 2 items that time after time, reading through the responses, came up of things that our residents would like to see in the county. So we would like to proceed with constructing them. Park equipment, this is basically lawnmowers, weed eaters, just the normal equipment to maintain our facilities. $26,000 is proposed for that. Park development, Quinton Park Playground. Quinton Park was constructed, I believe, in about 2006, 2007 timeframe. A lot of that equipment at Quinton Park is at its life expectancy. It's about 20 years old. So we are looking to install new equipment for a cost of $275,000. That concludes Parks and Recreation.
Yes. Mr. Hathaway, to kind of show the public how our people that are in charge of the different departments listen to them. I know Kim Turner has told me that some of that will be at Quinton Park fencing. One of the requests by some constituents is they've had autistic kids that play at the playground and they don't know their boundaries, and it's nice to have them set there for them.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things she looked at improving, Quentin.
Yes, that's included in the
Yeah.
price. Yes. Community development. As you all know, we are rewriting our comprehensive plan, which is step 2 of a 3-phase process. Step 1 was to develop a strategic plan. That's complete. We're nearing completion of having a draft for the comp plan. And the next step is to rewrite our development ordinances to make sure they align with our comprehensive plan, the goals and visions of our comprehensive plan and strategic plan. We really don't know how much this is going to cost, but we've put in a placeholder right now of $300,000. I think it's going to be a little bit more, but of course we're going to put it out to bid and competitively bid it and see what prices we get back. But we do anticipate starting this project next fiscal year. There are a host of projects from our school board. I'll touch on a couple of them. I won't go through the entire list, but the big ticket item is bus replacement. $685,284 for the replacement of school buses, and it's only 4 school buses. So yes, about $170 per school bus. Now the good thing is our school buses are on a 15-year replacement schedule, so we keep them as long as we possibly can. But the costs have really gone up. And I don't know if any of you have been inside of a school bus lately, but it's not the same school bus that I used to ride. When I got hot, we rolled the windows down. I don't even think you can roll the windows down in this. They're air conditioned, they're nice. A lot of cameras and a lot of safety equipment and a lot of radio equipment, communication equipment comes with each school bus. So.
Out of curiosity, what's the size of our fleet? How many buses?
That's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that. I mean, I would guess we're right around 50, but I'd have to get back to you on that. Yeah.
Any EVs or?
No. Well, we have one. We got one that we got as a grant that we're testing out. I know we have a couple of propane buses as well, but I do know we are testing an EV out that we got with the grant. Also, other projects include Wi-Fi improvements within the school system, a district-wide lighting project so that all of their schools can run more cost-effectively with the LED lighting. District-wide paving is included, and several HVAC projects for the various school systems are included. One being a big project, I believe, $1.4 million. New Kent Middle School HVAC, $1.4 million for the New Kent Middle School. I don't know who designed that school, but that school has something like 50 independent HVAC units in it. And the school has been phasing it. I mean, you probably will remember for the last 3 years, we've been replacing HVAC units. This 1.4 will be the final phase of HVAC unit replacements. Not sure why it was designed like that. I mean, there's some good to it. If you got one failure, you don't have to shut the whole school down. You can kind of isolate that, but that's not common to have that many HVAC units. But I will move forward to the sheriff's office. First item is the Harris radio system. And I apologize, I used the previous PowerPoint presentation, but the real number is $500,000 being proposed for the replacement and upgrade of our radios. These are the mobile units that our firefighters and our sheriffs carry on them. The older units are being phased out by the manufacturer. In fact, in 2026, they will no longer be supported by the manufacturer, so we're going to start the replacement now. The full cost of the replacement is actually $750,000, and I know I have $500,000 that's proposed, but my intent is to fully fund the replacement of this. And the other $250,000 will come from unspent contingency funds from the Fire Station 6 construction project and the animal shelter project. I believe we'll have more than enough to fully fund the purchase of new radios. Also, our Sheriff's Department have requested the replacement of their ballistic helmets. These items, the ballistic helmets, actually have a shelf life and an expiration date. And some of those helmets are nearing that. I guess, and I've been told, Kevlar, in general has a shelf life, and over time it does break down and lose some of its protection. So, firearm suppressors. There is a request, and I'm recommending funding the purchase. I believe it's about 7 firearm suppressors, and these are pretty much the silencers that would go on the rifles for our special operations unit. Mobile security trailer of $68,000. 4 were requested. I'm recommending funding for 1. A mobile security trailer, I'm sure we've all been to a Walmart parking lot or a Target parking lot, and you've seen this trailer with the big beam and a light and security camera on it. That is being requested by our sheriff's office, primarily for events. It's a great way to monitor the activity for special events. It's a great way for surveillance and reconnaissance. We'll see how much this first one gets used before we invest further in purchasing additional units.
Mr. Hathaway, a question on the suppressors.
Yes.
Why do we need those?
We do have a special operations unit that's part of a regional unit. And really, they call themselves special operations. Now, it used to be our regional drug task force, but now they do more than just drug task force. And they do a lot of operations where they feel it would be beneficial to have suppression. I can tell you, some of those operations includes going into buildings, hopefully unseen, to make arrests, sometimes to get people, hostages, and things like this. This definitely, and it's a unit, unfortunately, that is used more than you would think. It is a regional task force. We combine with King William, King and Queen, James City. I'm not sure that Charles City is part of that, but it's used more than you would think, unfortunately.
Yeah, Mr. Hathaway, I know it used to be, and I'm assuming they're still available, but I don't see any really grant offsets. I know something that we're always looking at grant opportunities. I know UASI was a big thing for a while, but not as much as it used to be.
It's not out there. Well, yeah, it's not as much. Actually, the UASI program, I'm not even sure if it's still around. But definitely those grant opportunities aren't like it used to be in the law enforcement section. I do think it looks a little better on the fire side. You got LPMG or LEMPG. Yeah, the emergency management grants still seem to be out there, but yeah, they're not out there like they used to be. All right. Voter registration has requested $48,000 for the electronic poll books, which essentially is a laptop computer with software from the state on there. They've moved away from the paper poll books. They still use those as a backup, but if you go in to vote, more than likely they're looking you up on a laptop to ensure that you're at the right precinct. Those laptops are about 6 years old, actually, so they're in need of being replaced.
Mr. Hathaway?
Yes.
Did they have some hiccups with the laptops this year?
They did, which is a big reason for their request. Some of them are just outdated, and they're operating off of old software, and like old software platforms, yes, old Microsoft software platforms, and every time the state uploads new software for the electronic poll books, sometimes there's issues with that. So they did have a lot of issues with the poll books, which delayed some of the openings of our precincts this election. Vehicle replacements. I won't go over every single vehicle replacement that's proposed, but I will talk about our policy. We do have a vehicle replacement policy, 125 miles for every county vehicle, 125,000 miles for every county vehicle, and 100,000 miles for public safety vehicles. The reason for the difference is public safety, they're just rougher on their vehicles. And their vehicles idle a lot, and a lot more than the regular county vehicles. So because of that idle time and the pursuits and the high speeds that they go, we have a shorter mileage requirement for their replacements. The largest vehicle replacement request, should be no surprise to anyone, is our Sheriff's Department, and that is $736,000 that I'm proposing to replace 9 vehicles.
What happens to the old?
The old vehicles, the majority of them goes to the schools. Those vehicles are recycled. The majority goes to the schools. Some vehicles will go to smaller police departments. We have sold some to West Point. We've sold some to Charles City. But they have a little less activity, so they can afford to get a little more miles on the vehicles. But the majority of our vehicles go to the schools and other county departments as well. When we retire a vehicle, it's on its last leg. Yes.
Mr. Hathaway, I know I'm having a flashback here again because I remember we discussed this last time. Is the school now taking any of the four-wheel drives?
They are. They are. They had to get a special opinion, special permission from the State Department of Education, but they now are able to transport kids in SUVs.
And so these old sheriff vehicles get reconfigured back into standard SUV? I mean, the seats and everything? The seats, we rip out the radio equipments, the sirens, all of that, the lights, yes.
Mr. Hathaway, I'm going to go up a couple of lines, and I see community office protection vehicle. Is that another word for tank?
Essentially, it is.
Yeah, okay.
Now, I'm not proposing
I understand that.
funding for that, but yes, it is an armored vehicle.
Okay.
Yes. And, there's a couple of concerns I have with that. And I understand the request. It is a safety issue, and there's situations where I'm sure that it could be used. But we do have access to vehicles like that through the state police.
That's what I thought is there's oftentimes interjurisdictional exchanges of vehicles like that since they are so specialized, and I thought the state police had 3 or 4 of them scattered throughout the state.
Yes. And the big issue too is maintenance. There's only a few people that can work on these, and it gets expensive too. So, yeah. Computer replacements, I definitely won't go through the long list of computer replacements. We do have a policy for that too. We replace all of our computers every 5 years. And we are on a rotation schedule. 5 years is selected because that's the longest period of time we can get warranty for a laptop or a desktop computer. And the same goes with our copier systems too. Our replacement schedule is based on the warranty. Now, we plug money in, but we don't stick to the replacement schedule as much. If we have a copier unit that's working and the office is happy and it's extended past its warranty, we actually have opportunities to get additional warranties on the copier machine. So I believe the copier machine in the admin office is about 7 years old, and it works fine, and I'm not looking to replace that anytime soon. But fortunately, there are opportunities to extend the warranty on our copiers. Public utilities. Due to timing, I won't go through every single project, but I just have a couple of comments on public utilities. We keep this separate from our other projects because of the way public utilities is funded. Public utility projects do not impact our capital fund balance. These projects are solely funded through revenues and fees collected from our public utility system. Public utilities is 100% self-funded. So a number of big projects that are planned. You'll see a lot of activity in the upcoming years. Upcoming months, actually. This spring, you will see waterline work coming up New Kent Highway, where we'll be connecting a water line from Quinton Community Center to the new Pomeroy Park subdivision in Quinton. And the goal there is to make one main looping water system. We are currently working on a permit through the state to withdraw water from the Pamunkey River as our main source of water. So we're interconnecting all of our independent water systems now. So when we do build that intake and treatment facility, all we'll have to do is tie into that loop that we're currently creating. So that project is underway. It's a big project for us, but the state is pushing us to find an alternative source of water due to the state of our current groundwater.
Mr. Hathaway,
yes.
I think that's a great foreshadowing and looking ahead. I know that's only water supply. Do we have any plans for sewage and basically treatment? What is that? Does that go along with this plan, or are we looking at that down the road?
You know, water, sewage treatment, wastewater treatment, we're in really good shape as far as capacity. We have a system that we built about 11 years ago, 12 years ago, and a lot of thought went into that because we built it way over capacity. We're probably using a third of the capacity of that plant right now. I don't know if anybody's ever been to our wastewater treatment plant, but we have different pools of where we treat. We only have one pool right now that's operating. 3 of the pool areas are vacant, so we're in good shape.
Will they be connected to this water system?
No, it's
that will need to be connected.
Independent systems. We're not. I
understand that. I'm saying, and down the line, the county will have to fund to receive this wastewater from the developments that are inevitably going to happen at some point. Mm-hmm. They need to be connected to our facility. The county needs to profit off that at some point, which will be 40 years down the road. None of us will be here, but we have to be able to be to that point. So, and that needs to be in the thought, and that's what I'm looking for, is we need to make sure that we can connect to this so the county can receive that income from the sewage.
In fact,
Because that's where the bill, that's where public utilities makes their money. They don't make as much money when it sells the water. It's where the sewage goes in.
in fact, we really need more flow. We're having issues with the operation of our plant right now because we don't have enough flow.
So that's something that we need to think about as a commission is when we approve new developments, they need to push the flow to the facility. This is, I mean, pretty simple. And then the county makes income off of that and the proffers from those developments, building the infrastructure to those points. Not us putting out the money. It's them. They want to build a neighborhood. They need to put the infrastructure in place to get it to our facilities.
That's right. And I just want to add too, with our wastewater treatment facility, I mean, we win awards all over the state, all over the country with our facility. We're one of the few facilities that can operate as a zero output, meaning that we don't have to put anything in the river. Most wastewater facilities are designed that after they treat the wastewater, the treated water is released into the river. We don't have to do that. We sell the treated water. We call it gray water, but we sell it to Colonial Downs in our golf courses. We sell it to West Rock. So the waste from that plant is actually making us money too.
We're in a good spot.
Yeah.
Mr. Hathaway, back to the water system. Do we anticipate in interconnecting all the independent systems in the county?
Not all of them. Some of them are just too small for us for it to be any. It doesn't make financial sense to connect those. But what we have connected so far is everything around Airport Road in Tunstall has been connected to the Farms of New Kent, which has been connected to Brickshire and Kentland. We're now looking, and it's in this budget, to bring Kentland to the courthouse area and tie all of that in. So we're building a loop, and then eventually we'd like to go down to Eltham Road as well.
Great.
Mr. Hathaway, if I can ask you a question, probably not related to necessarily this, but I know the Corps of Engineers did a study on developing our reservoir. Are we still looking at a reservoir?
You know, unfortunately, the laws have changed when it comes to building a reservoir, which makes it near impossible to build a reservoir. I don't think we'll see too many more reservoir projects across the state of Virginia because of the environmental laws. What we're looking at is drawing, and we have a permit to draw directly from the Pamunkey River.
That would just be that it's still free flowing, but you're not actually puddling the water up, right?
Right. No, we're drawing.
You're just taking
We're putting a straw in the river. We're pulling from that, and then we're going to treat it nearby and then deliver it to residents.
Okay.
All right. That really, well, as part of our capital improvements process, we do look at our fees as well. There are a few fee changes proposed. They are in your materials. There is a fee change proposed for our dangerous dog registration and renewals, a fee increase for that. And what I do each year, I ask our departments to really take a look at the cost that it involves in implementing our services in the county and to make sure that our fees match the cost of the delivery of service. And we also look at the market too, what other localities are charging, to make sure that we're in the ballpark as far as the cost of our fees. So we are proposing an increase to our dangerous dog registration and renewals. Cost recovery for emergency responses. We are proposing some increases, updating our fees to match. Really, what we're doing is matching what the insurance companies will pay for, because that's where we receive the majority of revenues from our emergency response services, is from the insurance companies. And each year they'll set out how much they'll pay for services.
For that dangerous dog, is that where an instance that a dog has done something and that
Yes.
there's a fee for?
That's when the judge has said this.
So that's sort of like housing, putting the dog into a place to hold for a while? Or is that a penalty?
Not necessarily. What we do is, so we're aware of where those dangerous dogs are, we make people register those dogs. So it's purely just a registration, so we know where those dangerous dogs are. And we can track them. I mean, if they've gotten loose, a couple of times and they're on the dangerous dog list, then there's probably a conversation our sheriff's department is going to have with that dog owner.
So what's the determination of whether it's a dangerous dog?
The courts will define that, meaning that there's already been an incident that has required someone to go to court.
It's not a breed.
Right.
It's not a breed. It can be a Chihuahua that has
It can be a Chihuahua.
Okay.
Yes. Some of those smaller dogs are. Yeah. Yeah. And then cost recovery for emergency medical services. This includes what we charge for events. And those costs are listed out in the materials that you have. We're also proposing some increases to our utility fees, actually implementing a new fee for hydrant flow testing and major utility asset plan reviews. These are for developers that construct pump stations or water storage tanks. Most of the time when we get those plans, we're sending them to our on-call engineers to review those plans. So the cost of us reviewing them has not matched up to the actual fees that we're currently collecting. So we are proposing to increase that.
And they require elegant software to make judgments from.
To do the modeling?
Correct.
Yes. And we are looking to increase our plan review fees for consistency with department cost and the market. And with that plan review fee, currently it's 50 cents per mile of utility line that's being proposed. We're proposing to increase that to 75 cents per foot, of utility line that's being proposed. So.
Mr. Hathaway, with public utilities, I had a couple of people talk about the minimum payment for a water bill.
Yes.
If I have a house and I don't live there, but I have a house, but I have to pay a certain amount. Has anybody looked at that within the last several years? We get it's up to $119 for 2 months. And I got some people that aren't around too much. And there could be, if we maybe lower the amount of water that would be used for the minimum.
Or set another tier.
And then there's some place there that if they actually use water, it would cost them a little bit, but not a drastic amount. But monthly they would be paying, or bi-monthly they'd be paying less.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Okay.
Yes, we can look at that. And actually, as part of our process, there may be some other utility fees that's proposed later on in our budget process. Every year, our financial consultants, Davenport and Associates, they run a financial pro forma of our utility system. And based on that pro forma and anticipated capital needs, we'll determine if our rates are good to cover our expenditures for next fiscal year. Fortunate for us, we haven't had a lot of increases. Last year was an anomaly where we did do a 2% fee increase, but we hadn't done an increase prior to that in a very long time. So.
Can I back you up to one thing? I just
Yes.
want to make sure that's correct. That emergency response fee,
Yes.
that jumped from $250 to $2,500?
Well, that's an emergency response fee for someone that has been convicted of drunk driving or driving while intoxicated. If that incident results in a situation such as that, a conviction dealing with drugs or drinking, yes, there is a higher fee for that.
So that is after a conviction then, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That is imposed by the judge?
No, this would be a charge that we would bill the applicant for the services we provide.
Just a side question, does New Kent County charge for errant 911 calls? An example is somebody stopped by a police officer and they don't think it's righteous for them to stop by a police officer, and the person that's being investigated by the police officer dials 911.
Yeah.
Do we charge for stupid calls like that?
We don't charge for that, but
Maybe a
I mean,
criminal
there are
charge.
cases where it's not
It's
legal
not- it's-
to make those calls, so they can be arrested and face other
And
fines.
I know that. I'm just wondering if we charge.
Yeah, no, we don't. We don't have it. Well, that concludes my presentation. I'm sorry I took a little longer than I had anticipated, but hopefully I've addressed some of your questions. And in the meantime, if you have the opportunity to review this prior to the next meeting, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to address any questions that you have. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
As always, you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any final questions for Mr. Hathaway? Thank you, Mr. Hathaway, for being detailed, and thank you, commissioners, for your questions. We'll be moving along now to unfinished business, and I believe I'm going to call Mr. Aragi. Last month we talked about I suggested maybe a like corridor study being completed for 249 around Dispatch Road towards the interstate. I'm wondering if any conversation's been had on that. I'm not trying to force it. I'm just saying if there was any conversations on that.
Yes, I talked to Miss Amy Inman, our Transportation Development Director. So the response that I received was that the county is currently, and I believe Mr. Moyer talked about this last month, the county is currently advancing a design for a roundabout at the Dispatch New Kent Highway intersection. The plan would be, obviously, that addresses safety concerns, but the plan would be, once that's installed, to conduct further studies to see where deficiencies exist and then address again at that point. The comprehensive plan also plans to, or makes a recommendation to address a small area transportation plan for the I-64 Bottoms Bridge corridor, which could potentially be expanded to the Quinton dispatch area.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I
Yes.
may.
Sure.
Because I know that we're looking for fundings to pay for this. But temporarily, could we do something like we did down on Route 33? We put the rumble strips down there to let people know that they were reducing their speed to go into our lower speed area? Would any of that actually kind of...
We can request it from VDOT. I believe VDOT was behind the Route 33 rumble strips. So we can definitely request it. And if you guys have any, detailed questions about kind of what triggers some of these studies or really transportation improvements, Ms. Inman would be happy to field those calls and questions as well.
I just feel something is better than nothing right at the moment. And I know it's going to probably take a while for that roundabout to get there, but we've got to do something, even if it's just a rumble strip, just to get that traffic slowed down a little bit so people have opportunity to go in and out of the traffic.
Well, Ms. Townsend, that 45 starts way before Dispatch. It starts at Whole Family Donuts, almost right there is where, at Henpack is where it starts. So where would you put the rumble strips?
Well, the biggest problem is the traffic that's coming off interstate going towards West Point.
Well, that's
All right.
45 also.
They're okay at 45 until they get to like Citizen Farmers Bank. And then as you're getting up that little upgrade, it's kind of like they speed up.
Yeah.
And they're at least 55.
VDOT's answer to that is that's speeding.
It's an enforcement issue.
Yeah, it's an enforcement. That's right. It's an enforcement issue. They're not going to.
Well, I
they
think
wouldn't touch that.
If we would probably go back and look at most of the accidents that occurred there, I would think a lot of it had to do with the speed, because sometimes it looks like people actually speed up to.
They were probably
intimidate
summoned
you a little bit.
because of that.
But yeah, something. There needs to be something to sort of get their attention.
We will be getting another. we're getting a temporary light that will be the left-hand, coming northbound on 249 will be the left-hand turn onto 64 going westbound. There's going to be a light there that will break up that traffic to some extent.
To some extent, but it might be helpful to have rumble strips for the person that's coming from the east going west, because remember, you've got a lot of people driving that have not ever had a stoplight there. So you need to do something to sort of get their attention. So it might benefit several ways, going east or west.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend. Next item for business is public hearings, and Mr. Silva, we have none, correct? Okay, thank you very much. New business. Anything from staff regarding new business? No? Moving along. If the commissioners don't mind, I'd like to make my chairman's report after staff reports tonight, which will put us right to Plan RVA report with Reverend Hathaway. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Plan RVA held their joint annual meeting on December 5th. It was really a great gathering. I think every locality probably had 100% of their people there, but it gave us a great opportunity to network with our counterparts. There were several presentations. The first one was RVA Rising, which is a long-term data-driven study of the region. Plan RVA took the economic development plans from the localities and developed one central plan. And I think that's going to pay some real great dividends for us. Their top priorities were housing affordability, economic opportunity, and early childhood education. Martha Schickel, the executive director, did a presentation on how Plan RVA organizational structure and goals can align with RVA Rising. And that was a really good presentation. This morning, Martha Schickel led a panel discussion on the state of the region, had Richmond's mayor, Chesterfield County's county administrator, and Henrico County's county manager. And it was really a great presentation. The things that they pushed was really partnership between the localities. I think the mayor made the point that it's getting to the point where the average citizen will not be able to tell where one locality ends and another begins. And so because of that interaction, localities have to partner with each other. The economic opportunity was another big thing that they pushed. The thing that grabbed my attention was the workforce. And they made the point that as we're attracting industry here, we have to be attentive to the needs that they are looking for. Are we able to provide the trained work staff, which means the greater partnership with local business and economic development? The last point that was made in the session today was the need to have the schools involved with planning. And that was kind of a radical discussion. But they suggested that when a student, I think this was the county administrator from Chesterfield, that says they have roughly 5,000 students graduating each year. And their goal is to make sure that each graduate has an actual plan that's a workable plan for what they do the day after they graduate. And I've heard our superintendent say the same thing. So I think both discussions were really good, pushing economic development, workforce opportunities. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Now we'll move on to Commissioner's report, and I'll go roundtable, and I'll start with Ms. Rose.
I don't have anything at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Mr. La Rochelle, sir.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays to everybody.
If I may do so, sir, you were questioning earlier tonight regarding data centers. Would you like to mention what you were thinking then?
Just several years ago, we updated the zoning ordinance related to solar and battery storage. There's no mention in the zoning ordinance about data centers. We have them now just down the road in Henrico County. We have one proposed in Charles City County. So I don't have a crystal ball, but maybe something coming our way. So we may want to begin discussion on that topic before it lands on our lap.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Dombrowski.
I have nothing at this time either. Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Townsend.
At this time, I'm not going to have anything to say, but Merry Christmas.
Okay, thank you. I have a hint that you may want to say something later. Reverend Hathaway, anything additional, sir?
No, I'll ditto Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Dr. Schmidt.
Nothing.
Mr. Davis.
Our update for the comp plan committee, speaking with Todd Gordon with EPR, we're still waiting on the DEQ review of the draft plan. We did just get back the results of VDOT's review. Both of those reviews are required by state law. VDOT was primarily concerned with making sure that VTrans, or the statewide transportation plan, was incorporated and properly cited. And we're certainly working to make that included in the plan. Also, VDOT also wants to include their recently published 6-year improvement plan, which would be no problem to add that as well. And Merry Christmas to all.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Moyer.
I'm good. If everybody has a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, I'll be happy.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Staff reports.
Nothing else from us for closing out 2024. Look forward to working with everybody in 2025 and having another good year.
This is Mayor Augrey. Thank you, Mr. Augrey, excuse me. Known you for 5 years, can't pronounce your name. Now I'll come with, really it's going to be more of a chairman's statement than it is a report. So if you just kind of follow with what I'm going to be reading here. Our holiday season is again upon us. And as usually the case, many of us look back over the last year in remembrance. Last year at this time, I highlighted some of the challenges this commission experienced either individually or collectively. And at that time, I was not trying to predict any future changes for 2024, but they occurred. Most noteworthy was the loss of individuals and their institutional knowledge of these individuals from our planning department. This event in a planning division that staffed as leanly as New Kent County's could have been devastating, and the rebuilding time from a similar event could have been considerable. However, as it came to be, the pieces of the planning division were reassembled and slightly reorganized, and without a hiccup, the business of the Planning Commission continued. If there was a hiccup, nobody noticed. So thank you to those involved, including our Board of Supervisors, Mr. Hathaway, and thank you to those individuals who took the reins, the challenges, chances, and the opportunities. Mr. Raggi, Mr. Silver, Mr. Ryder, and I'm sure there's several other more in the background. As to the commissioners, thank you again for completing another year of your service. Ms. Townsend, I believe this is about the 30th year. Thank you very much, or plus or minus. Ms. Rose, Dr. Schmidt, thank you for directing our public hearings. Dr. Hathaway, Reverend Hathaway, thank you for representing us at Plan RVA and your participation in all these many other volunteer efforts that you provide. And Mr. Davis, thank you for your leadership in the comprehensive plan and sitting to my right side. Once again, our changes continue into next month at the Planning Commission's annual reorganization meeting. I encourage all commissioners to consider and discuss with their colleagues and members of this commission for the positions of chair and vice chair and the representation to Plan RVA. It has been my distinct pleasure and honor to be your chairman this past year, and I'll close with a warm wish for everyone to enjoy the holiday season. Thank you. Our next meeting, disregard what was on the agenda. Our next meeting is scheduled right now for Tuesday, January 21st, 2025 at 6:30 in this boardroom. That is a Tuesday, not a Monday, because Monday is a holiday. If there's no further business to be conducted by the Planning Commission, I would be entertaining a motion. You have it. Meeting's closed. It is 7:52 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody.